Hey Ian, it's been a while. I meant to get around to checking out this map painting of yours. So I just wanted to do mention a couple of things with the image to help you in the next ones. So the thing that I think strikes me the most in this image is your black levels amongst these trees. Some of them are just not matching, and then we've also got some grading issues through here. So let's start over on these ones. So as you'll know, like black levels start to fade out as you go into the distance, and you want to always match your black levels to anything that is nearby them. Like if it's not exactly correct and it's not a perfect gradient going into the background, that's not a major issue, but you can see through here in the background here that you've got some really dark black values. So to check this, what we can do is add a adjustment layer and set it to, I think, color. Yeah, so this just gives us our accurate black and white values so that we can paint the light. And I'm just going to add something on top of your, because I'm not going to go into each layer. And we're just going to set it to lighter color. So ideally you'd actually go in on each layer of your trees and paint the value that you're and grade these images to make sure that they match those that are around them. But actually I might let's try lighten. We'll just go through these. So lighter color might be the only one that we could do. Let's have a look. I see you've got some. You must have collapsed your image. Yeah, okay. Alright, well, let's see if we can. Let's turn all that off. See if we can just isolate the layer that's back here, so this one, and see if we can add a levels on top of it, and we'll bring up the blacks. So I'm just looking at this value here and trying to match it to what's behind it, and then we'll bring the overall exposure down with the contrast. So that's sort of what's happened, and there's a lot more work to be done on this to match it to what's going on around it. But you can see, like if we just zoom out a bit, you can see here that these black values, when I turn this on, they're just not crunching and not popping as much. This is a major area of issue. Let's have a look at this one. Alright, like even just turning that layer off just helps, because I mean it helps in one sense because you're not seeing the black shadows, but it also doesn't help because it changes the composition. But if we go in and grab this layer, say let's have a look. Add another levels on this. You could do this with curves as well. I'm just doing it with levels. So right now this level is similar to that of which is in the background, so we probably have gone too far. So you sort of got to pick something in the foreground and the background and go halfway. So 13, let's go with like 6, and then let's increase the contrast. Actually, let's go to 9 or 10. And then just increase the contrast. So if we turn that on and off, you'll see that just in the background it's just not popping as much. I still think that this area through here needs a little bit of work anyway, but it may actually be the what might be throwing it off is the crunchiness of the layer in front rather than just the value. So yeah, you've got the same thing continuing up to the right here. This is really nice. The values in here are really nice, but I think based on how hazed out everything is in this middle ground, I know this has got mist on top of it, but visually speaking, regardless of whether a photograph would, do this, this area says to me it's quite a distance back, and then this area here feels the same as like all of this. It feels really crisp. So if we just paint, let's just sample a color and let's paint it in just really softly. This is another way that you could do it, right? Like even that, it's extreme, right? But it sort of it shows you very roughly what I'm sort of talking about. And then if I use our blend if, and if we want to reveal the layer beneath, let's zoom in. So I only want to apply this lift to our dark areas of the underlying layer. So if I remove it and then just creep it in, we're going to get this crunchy look, but then we hold the Alt key and just drag it out, and we can sort of feather it like that. So we're sort of lifting the shadows, and this is not the ideal way. Like ideally you'd actually grab the layer and excuse me, grab the layer and control the levels and grade the layer. The next thing I wanted to mention is your softness of your layers. So see here, these sections through here are sort of standing out from the background because they're not matching the background softness, and it's actually like it's easier to see when it's zoomed out a bit. It's like this little silhouette here is sort of popping off the background, and you don't want that to happen. Here's another example through this area here. So you just have to take a blur and just soften that out. So let's see if we can find this really quickly. There it is. I mean, I'm sure you get what I'm saying. You can see it yourself. It's just probably in the moment you might not be noticing those sorts of sharpness errors. So if we just soften these out, and I'm going to take them to an extreme, but just so you can sort of see the difference between them. So if I undo and redo it, you can kind of see the sort of effect that we're going for. Okay, so there was another note I had, which was with your village. Your reflections are missing. So if we were to simulate what the camera would see, it's not exactly what you're seeing here, right? Because you got to distort these inwards, but you should be able to see primarily. You would see this guy. You've got these two. This would be blocked. Although you would see the top of this, because you've got. Well, maybe not. I might just peek it in just a tiny little bit just to indicate. But if you were to do this accurately, you've got to actually cut out each one, flip them, line them up to here, then distort them in. This one's the sort of the main one that is missing. So we go do overlay. And oh, by the way, if you are adding a mask and you hold Alt or Option, I think it is on a Mac, and click the mask, it'll actually fill it with black when you when it adds, which is super handy if you know that you want to mask it all out. Yeah, so with that added, obviously I haven't softened it out, but with that added, it sort of helps to show. Actually, you wouldn't see most of this, but it just gives you the sort of that subconscious appearance that there's a reflection there. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is these God rays and this atmosphere effect that you've got going on, because I think it's this layer, right? Yeah, so mostly it's like these two layers, and I think they actually look the best with that off in terms of their own lighting. Let's ignore this, because they're obviously, this is too bright compared to this now, but with these two layers off, the fall off from the light feels more natural here, whereas when you turn them on, this sort of glariness that's coming through here, like I get what you're trying to indicate is these God rays coming through between the mountain pass, but that never actually occurs. The only time you would probably see this sort of level of God ray between two mountains is if there was a super amount of dust up there, and if you're putting dust in snowy environments, it sort of conflicts with what we expect to see, which is because dust typically you see at lower altitudes. I found some images here of Lake Moraine in Canada, which show this sort of contrast and the sort of lighting that you see in something similar. And these are obviously not quite the same as what you've got, because the lighting's different and all that, but it gives you an idea of the sort of contrast that you're seeing between the mountains and the sky. And there's no haziness between, it's just a constant haze across everything. So through here, what my suggestion would be to make it look more realistic is just totally remove this layer. That one's okay. That one's okay. Let's just turn them all off and see what yeah, so like the way that it's lit already, just like that, is almost perfect. Let's check out the actual image. I want to see what the sky looks like. Yeah, so I mean, you can see here, it's not, this is cloudy, but it's actually quite directly lit in the foreground, so the sun is actually peeking through the clouds and shining direct light on this, and you're not getting any sort of God rays between these elements. So in here, I wouldn't expect to see these sorts of highlights. So I think if you just removed those, and then here, because we've now got the mountains are too bright, so we'll pull them down. Maybe something like that. I feel like there's still some God rays coming through here. That might be, yeah, that's it. So I'm not saying turn these off entirely, but I mean just this. You've got a layer in here. That's that layer. So this layer here has some sort of accentuating these gaps. If you want to accentuate those gaps, the way you do it is, so let's leave that off, and we'll come in and add a clipping mask on top of here, and we'll leave that on normal, and come in and you want to mask out the edge that you want. So I'm just doing a really rough job. And we'll bring this down here. Alright, so this is separating this background piece with this foreground piece. And down here, because they blend together, I'm just going to do a, let's actually go up this edge. And then that'll do. Alright, so let's add that as a mask. And if we just sample our Atmos color and paint that in, let's go. Alright, so see how just with a single brush stroke we can push this whole piece back and make it feel like it's a grander environment where these mountains are massive, you know, going all the way back into the distance, but we're not having this like a consistent God ray coming through between this piece. It actually makes it feel like there's way more distance between these two mountains because the entire piece is just in light. And say let's push it even further back and go 75. Did that do anything? I'll just drag it. Yeah, so you can see. And then for this area here, where we've got the blend, we'll just remove this from here. Although this is almost entirely unnecessary because I'm about to just totally blur it. And in here I've got a smudge tool, which if I bring up my tools, I have a like this tool which just totally destroys the edge. So see there, I'll show you the mask. So it just smudges it out so that you can't see it. And then you probably also want to go in with a really soft blur and just soften out these edges, because you never want to have like 1 pixel sharp edges. Oh wait, I'm not selecting the right layer. There you go. So through here, soften this, and this doesn't look right, by the way. So you'd want to just correct that edge, and then through down here. There you go. And yeah, so I do the same thing with like this edge here is sort of glaring out too much. And actually I think what you've tried to do there is, I believe what you tried to do is like a sun ping. So in case that is what you were going for, I'm going to find that layer. There it is. Okay, that guy. Alright, so this one down here. Alright, let's check out what you've done here. Yeah, so good work on the grading. That's all good. That pushes it back into the right distance. Just by the way as well, I've noticed your black tint here is very red, whereas the black tint in this is a lot bluer, and over here is a lot bluer. This is too red compared to this. So you just want to go in and I'll show you how you do that. The way I do it was with color balance. So I'm just going to add a color balance up here, and then let's just paint in a mask just in this section here so that we can just I can quickly show you. So you go to your tone, select shadows, and we want to suck out some of the red, but we don't want to put too much cyan in, so you put some blue in as well. And see how almost immediately, actually if I go clipping and I paint this in here, let's just remove it from this piece, because you want to grade each individual piece obviously because they all come from different images. But these two here, actually I think these were part of the same image, weren't they? Yeah, they are. So there's something that you might have done, or it might just be, yeah, there's something that's going on top of this which is pushing it more warm, which might be our atmosphere, but we want to keep the color temperature the same. So you can see there, like, that makes a massive difference. Just makes it feel like it's in the same world. Alright, let's go back to this piece and check out what you've done here. So this guy, yep, that's fine. So that's the offending layer that I wouldn't add. So I'm going to delete that. Shadow, yep, that also makes sense. And what have you used for, yeah, overlay, that's good. And that's another layer that I wouldn't do. But if you do want to add like a ping here to kind of highlight the sun hitting this edge, I would do it as, say, a new layer, make it color dodge, and fill the layer with black. So it's not black yet. Right. And then we want to sample one of our highlight colors. So let's go over here, and with a really, really faint brush, you just want to paint in here. So this is something that I'll be teaching more about. It's painting light. I'm sure you've seen Max Berman's stuff on painting light. This is another technique. I don't know what he does or uses, but this is a way that you can just paint only in the help to ping these highlights. So that's without and with. So if we look at the full image, I mean, I'm not suggesting that you should even do this though, because it really stands out over there, and I don't actually particularly like it. But if, for instance, you wanted to paint over your entire image and you wanted to ping some of these highlights, you can do that with just a single layer on top. And just be careful of how much you add in the background, because obviously the background should start to fade out compared to the foreground. So what is this before and after? Which I kind of like it up here on this piece, but the rest, I think it sort of has a weird feeling. But yeah, that's basically it. Oh yeah, these trees need a bit of color grading. To match the background. They should have either a little bit more blue, or the background should have a bit more red. You can quite clearly see that they're not matching. They're also not matching to this section through here. There's sort of like you've got this strip here that just isn't quite graded.